Hi everybody, my name is Paul Santry, and today I just want to talk about Python ethical considerations when it comes to coding in Python and questions that Python developers have to ask themselves every day when they create programs. So this first slide here is going to be dedicated to ethical and responsible use of creating code. So starting off with privacy, right? Developers have to meet regulations both for laws and just other government agencies in order to release their code to the public. And they have to also disclose to users if it's tracking their data, if there's any vulnerabilities, and that goes with this next part here with transparency. They have to disclose and release to the public decision making algorithms, and if there is any risk of their programs. So if there is risk of them getting cross-site scripted, for example, they have to release that if they are aware of that. Another big one is fairness and bias, right? You don't want to be biased to somebody per se that cannot see as well. And let's say you have a multi-factor program that you need to enter a sentence in, and if that person can't see as well, we might have to find a way around that and make it so they can still use our program. And the last one here is environmental impact, right? How can our programs be made more efficient and not use as much energy and kind of cause all this energy waste, right? It's a big issue nowadays, especially. So it's something that should always be considered. This next slide here is going to talk about software development in Python that I think makes the world a better place. So starting off with accessibility issues, right? Somebody who may not be able to move as much, it might be harder for them to use a keyboard and mouse. So there is an API package called PyAutoGUI that it automates those inputs for you, and it can be used on anything for their computer. And the best part about it is like it doesn't have to just be Python. All they do is install it and it works. The next one is security, right? If you didn't know, Python's community is very, very huge, and they're always looking at how they can make Python better, especially with security. So there's frameworks like the Django and Flask, and they come with built-in mechanisms to prevent a bunch of attacks, such as cross-site scripting mentioned earlier, and SQL injection attacks. Um, there's also privacy issues, right? All over the world, right? Say hacking, for example, it's a big issue, and there are people out there that are hashing and making encryption mechanisms, and Python helps with that a lot with stuff like, for example, HashLib, for it helps with hashing a lot when it comes to Python. It's a great program, and then yeah, it's just overall Python's great for privacy and making it so people's security and privacy is safe. And then there's compliance, right? Um, Basically, there's a bunch of stuff that Python has to be in compliant with, and there are libraries such as Audit Wheel that makes sure it meets those legal requirements for them to release to the public automatically. Um, so let's talk about neat coding here for a second because it's a big thing, especially in Python. It's a little bit of a subtopic here, but bear with me. Basically, the reason why we want to have neat coding is because um, it can help you with, or it can help you and other developers understand your code, right? Let's say you have an issue with a line or a few lines of code. If you go back and have a developer look at it, if it's neat, it can help them diagnose what the issue is, or even yourself diagnose what the issue is. It reduces complexity and breaks down large, complex blocks of code, right? So from earlier, the energy issue, this could help with that if we, take 1,000 lines of code and condense it down to, maybe 500 or 300. That could help with a lot of energy consumption. It creates consistency. So, like for example, let's say you have a bunch of different variables, all with different naming conventions. Um, if you keep those naming conventions the same, it kind of goes with that first sentence there, and just making it so it's a lot more readable and neat to look at. And again, it makes it easier to maintain, right? So if you're debugging and you find an issue, it might be a lot harder compared to if you are debugging, you see all your neat code, it all has comments, it says this is what this does, this is what this loop does, right? If you have that there, it might be a lot easier for you to diagnose your code. Um, so how do you maintain code exactly though? So first off, there's something called PEP 8. PEP 8, it's the official styling guide by Python that Python developers have to follow. It helps with consistency, as well mentioned before. Um, there's even tools and frameworks such as Flake8 that will specifically help you with maintaining PEP 8 compliance. Descriptive naming, right? Like I said earlier, you want to have one specific naming convention. You don't want to have many different naming conventions for things. So, like, let's say you're making a program that you need the maximum and the minimum number for. Instead of having number and then maximum minimum number, maybe just having those maximum minimum number variables are a lot better. Proper commenting, right? Basically, comments are there to describe what lines of code are doing. So, like, if you, let's say, for example, you put a comment right next to an if statement, it's supposed to say, this is what this if statement is doing, rather than this comment's here because John Smith wanted to put it here, right? So proper commenting does help a lot, especially again when it comes to debugging, and of course testing regularly. So think of it like this, right? You'll have a lot better chance of your code working properly, especially when it comes to if you take the code, you go line by line and make sure everything works, and then test it little by little, compared to if you write your code start to end, try running it, and it doesn't work. It's just a lot easier to do like that. But yeah, that's all I have for you guys. I hope everybody has a good day.